Hello, fellow lore keepers. Welcome back to Alt-Tab Horror with one last video covering the Cooking Companions DLC trailer, The Origin of the Chompettes. This video is going to consist of 3 parts. First, we'll do a deeper analysis of important parts of the trailer. Then, we'll go over my predictions for the DLC. And finally, I'll let you know what I specifically hope we're going to learn from the DLC. If you're interested in more Cooking Companions videos, be sure to subscribe to keep up to date with all the lore when the DLC drops this summer. Now, let me just say, this is all purely speculation and thoughts that are just bumping around in my head because I'm ecstatic for the DLC to come out, and it's fun to think about different ways that it could play out. However, regardless of the specifics, I do believe the origin of the Chompettes will prove to coincide with the origin of the Baba Yaga as well. So let's get right to it. So let's begin with the in-depth analysis of this still that was grabbed, brightened, and enhanced from the trailer. This is almost certainly the room where it happened in the basement, because in the center we find the staircase to the abyss that we go down in the original game. However, during that time, we see nothing else of this room, so it's incredibly exciting Dear Dream Studios decided to drop this picture in the trailer for us to see more. There is so much to see with just this one frame. Of course, what stands out the most are the countless birdcages strewn throughout the room. I count at the very least 17. And I'm gonna be honest, I don't think these are for birds. I hypothesize that these cages are where our victims' bodies are put on display. Serial killers are known to keep trophies of their victims, so it would track that this is where the main character is keeping all the children's bodies that they've cannibalized over the years. What's interesting about seeing all these bird cages down here in the basement is that this isn't the first time in the game that we've seen a bird cage. There's one in the bedroom as well. And if we're right that these are for displaying the children, perhaps that one was as well. I think that birdcage might actually be for someone special, but I'll get into that in the next section, because I want to finish digging into this frame. In the bottom right-hand corner, we do see the iconic Cauldron and Broom the Baba Yaga is known to use, which further supports our Baba Yaga theory, which is pretty cool, but those are obvious. I want to talk about some other more interesting items here. For instance, these 2 dark rectangles up top. This is a basement room, which would mean that there are rooms on top of this one. These could be trapdoors used for quick delivery to the basement. Notice the blood underneath them. Could that be from dropping bodies down here? Remember that hole in the bedroom I mentioned in my 17 things you missed in the trailer video? Which is up there if you missed it. Boop, boop. Perhaps that hole leads to one of these trapdoors. But where do you think the other one goes to? I'd love to hear your ideas. The bathroom, maybe? Or the kitchen? Perhaps they'll correlate to where we found the etched letters in the original game. I mean, it's just a thought. Another interesting thing in this room is this giant hole. Now, my immediate thought with this is how the Chompettes have said they move around the cabin using the Mouseholes. This one, of course, is much bigger than the others, but I still think it's plausible to assume that this is where they escaped the basement from. Next interesting find are these 2 little guys. They look like birds to me, especially the fact that they're sitting on top of bird cages. And treating them as such, I did some research into what birds mean in Slavic folklore. Turns out, after a person dies, it is believed that the souls are separate from the body, and they dwell on Earth for 40 days after someone has died. If they are chosen to be seen during these times, they are often depicted as birds. Different types of birds are used as messengers from the afterlife. So, a bird can be a positive sign of luck, but they could also be a painful reminder of death or loss of a loved one. Which is huge in supporting my theory that the main character is trying to fight against the Baba Yaga's power inside of them. I'll explain more later on in the video so that we can focus on what's in this room, because there are a few more odd items to include in this picture. If you take a look at what I just circled, they look to me like newspapers. But what would the main character need newspapers for? I don't think it's for a little bit of light reading. Perhaps that's where they found out about the butcher of Zakopane in order to bring him to the cabin? Why did we have notes in our cabin about the butcher unless we were keeping an eye on him? Could we be looking for other killers like us? For someone to replace us as the Baba Yaga? The final thing I want to mention about this frame is what is staring at us dead center. This is a mirror with a face. It was made explicitly clear in the original game that we are too frightened to look at ourselves in the mirror in the bathroom. And in the end game, while we're in the basement, we're told to turn on the lights so that we can see what we've done and see what we've become. I think we'll finally be able to see what we look like in the DLC when we get to this room. And if we do, you know that artwork is gonna be mwah. Next thing I wanted to talk about in the trailer is why Karin is the only present-day character in it. There's no Anatoly, Gregor, or Mariah, unless of course that red jump scare is her, but I don't think it is. But if that's the case, what I'm about to say still stands. My first thoughts were that Dear Dream Studios put Karin in order to juxtapose her with another character in the trailer, maybe Raspberry, since they seem to have such a similar cold, rough personality, or Potato, who she has been compared to several times in the game by the Chompettes. There is the Licko jump scare in the trailer directly following the frames with Karin, and if we slow down these frames, we see the Licko again, and not the Baba Yaga. The single eye gives it away. So what could this signify? Perhaps she's in the trailer because of her similarity to the Licko? If my previous theory was correct about Karin being the Licko who brings the unlucky travelers to the cabin, then perhaps one of the Chompettes was the Licko of their time. But is it Potato or was it Raspberry? There are just so many questions that I'm so excited for the DLC to answer. But another reason Karin could be in the trailer comes from the unofficial Cooking Companions Discord by user Dragonage for the win. DragonageFTW theorizes that the DLC is going to be flashbacks once it's just you and Karin left in the cabin, which honestly is a pretty solid theory. Media is constantly using flashbacks to tell a story, and there are actually quite a few things that could support this, starting with the "This is your hell" line from the trailer. Although the main character is not dead, your hell could be referencing the cyclical nature of the main character's experience. They're not dead, but they live seemingly forever in order to be tortured with what they've done. Another reason flashbacks could be a thing is because if the Baba Yaga is a supernatural being who has control over our mind and body, it's not a stretch to believe that she can give us flashbacks to remind us of the horrors of what we've done. Which then leads me to my predictions for what's coming with the DLC. I stated at the beginning of this video that I believe the origin of the Chompettes will coincide with the origin of the Baba Yaga. Now let me explain. The "This is your hell" line wouldn't be relevant if we enjoyed what we were doing. So there's clearly some sort of cyclical hell that we've been put in as punishment for something we've done in the past. Could it be the eating of our child when faced with starvation? Hear me out for a second and listen to this scenario. The time is the 1700s. During that time, the butcher of Zakopane is cutting through the town. Inside the secluded forest cabin are two people, a mother and a son. We are Raziel's mom, biological or adopted. We lived with Raziel in the cabin, and that's why there are two beds in the bedroom. Kids' toys in the dresser, socks, and Raziel's toy boat. We're a sweet, loving family. But this isn't our cabin. It's the Baba Yaga's. Something happens, maybe a storm or a great flood, that cuts off our food supply and we begin to starve. This is when the Baba Yaga begins to enter our weakened mind. Because of her influence combined with our incredible hunger, we snap and start to cut pieces off of Raziel and eat him. We can't just kill him flat out because he's our son, but the Baba Yaga is forcing us to survive. All the while, Raziel is telling his famous puns to remind us everything will be okay. Similar to the way Gregor says he would do anything to protect those he loves. During this time, we keep Raziel's body in the birdcage in the bedroom as a way to be with him until his final days, as well as punishment for what we've done so we will never, ever forget it. That's why there is an E carved into the birdcage in the bedroom. Raziel was scraping his name into it, but the other letters are worn away. As long as he's in the cage, we can be together forever. This is the tragic backstory of Raziel, but where do the other Chompettes come in? This cabin was supposed to be a safe haven for the kids. During this time, the butcher of Zakopane was on the loose, horrifically murdering kids, so it's not that much of a stretch for the Chompettes' parents to send them to stay with a relative in the forest, away from town, away from the butcher. This would actually be a pretty solid parallel to the real-life tales of the Baba Yaga, such as Vasilisa the Beautiful, who was sent to the Baba Yaga's cabin for help. However, the children come to the cabin to find their friend to be a little bit different than they expected. And Onion's cousin Raziel is already a Chompette, which, rather than sentient foods, they're actually what's left of the bodies that have been eaten. We just make up the image of something cute because we can't face the horrors of what we've done. Being alone with our son slowly dying in front of us, along with the hunger that sets in with eating human flesh, the Baba Yaga would have almost total control over our psyche, so I'm sure it wouldn't take long for the next child to become a victim. But where does the Butcher of Zakopane come in? If he is Potato, how does he get to the cabin? Well, given what little information we've gotten from the original game about him, I believe that the Butcher is sentenced to exile in the woods as punishment for his murders. And you may think that there's no reason to believe this, but I'm actually basing this off the offhanded remark that Potato makes about the Shakespearean play, The Life and Death of King Richard II. In this play, King Richard's cousin is sentenced to exile for murder, so he could be noting the similarity of his life to this play. However, in this forest, he finds a cabin full of new prey, his cabin of earthly delights. While he's there, the Butcher realizes we have some sort of special powers and decides he wants them for himself. So he watches us work, all while trying to court us, get closer to us, learning that he could take our powers for himself. Serial killers are often seen as charming in order to trick their victims, which is why Karin reminds the Chompettes of the Butcher we had a closer, more romantic relationship with them, albeit based on lies and ulterior motives. Maybe we actually fell in love with the Butcher during this sick, twisted time. One of the endings in the original game does have us leaving the cabin with Potato to continue killing, insinuating that we've killed together before. Perhaps we confide in the Butcher about what happened with Raziel, and he assumes if he kills and eats the other kids that he too could receive supernatural powers. This is what leads him to trapping the kids in the basement as seen in the promo picture for the DLC. The Butcher tortured for fun while we justified what we did by convincing ourselves it was done for survival. The Butcher wanting to hurt these kids for fun crossed a line, so we took him out, just as we did with Karin. Overcome with the grief at the loss of a loved one, we decided to end the children's suffering by killing them all after we took out the Butcher. But that wasn't the end, because they all came back as the Chompettes, reminding us every single day of the horrors of what we did. Now, of course, there is a lot of grasping at straws with this scenario, but hey, it's fun to think about, and I think it has just enough to hold it together until the DLC comes out. I mean, if you disagree, just comment below what you think the story will be. I'd love to hear how everyone thinks it'll play out. And finally, we get to what I hope we're going to learn during our playthroughs of the Cooking Companions DLC. First, I need to know what is going on with that radio. Why is it even mentioned in the game when it doesn't really even seem that important? Why do we specify that it's more technologically advanced than everything else in the cabin? And who is talking to us through it? I need answers! Another thing I hope we learn is who the messenger was from the note attached to the living room wall. Is it someone we know? Raspberry? Raziel? Potato? I honestly have no idea, but I sure do hope we find out. Perhaps finding out who the messenger was will help us put together a timeline. Who came to the cabin first? Was it ours or the Butcher's? And how long has this actually been going on? And last but not least, I want to know who we play. I mean, if we're a human possessed by the Baba Yaga, who were we before? Were we always this way? Or will the DLC really be a telling of how we came to be the Baba Yaga? And that just about wraps up my thoughts on everything currently out concerning Cooking Companions. If you've missed any of my other theory videos, be sure to check them out to learn more of this incredibly interesting game. And be sure to subscribe so you don't miss my playthrough of the DLC when it comes out, obviously followed shortly by a theory video. And don't forget to give a like to this video if you liked it. Until next time, sweet dreams, Lord Keepers.
Welcome back to Haunt